through the door.
Okay, all right.
Just in time.
Good.
Yep.
All right, so this is May 25th meeting of the Lunenburg Water Commissioners. This meeting being recorded for rebroadcast over Lunenburg Public Access. So we're reviewing signed warrants, which is done. We're gonna skip over the minutes due to the absence of Mr. Woodward. And we're gonna jump right into keep working along with the discussion on the Hickory Hills well. So we'll welcome the board members that are here and continue that discussion.
Okay, you wanna go? Tony?
So just for the sake of the camera, if you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll continue our discussions.
I'm Paula Bertram, president of the Hickory Hills Landowners, Inc.
John Borcham, on Board of Directors of Hickory Hills Landowners, Inc.
Okay. So, I guess we're just looking to see if you've had any movement on your end with your board. Have you brought anything back to them?
So I want to start, we did bring it back to the board, and the board is not necessarily opposed to looking at the study, but the bigger concern right now is the zone one and the validity of that zone one, and what restrictions, if any, are implied, but you don't, the biggest question that we have is under 310 CMR 22, the water district has to own or control the entire zone one.
Right,
And obviously that's not the case.
that is the case.
You don't own or control the lake.
We control the zone one.
We control the water, we don't control the land under the
Right.
water.
But we
They
control,
don't-
we
They
have
control the land, they don't control the water.
water under the land.
Great.
Right, so the wording we got from the clarification, because this was one of your big questions,
Mm-hmm.
from our attorney through our enabling acts of 1939, what did he say? So his summary of all of this, I can
This
read
is
the
who,
whole
I'm
thing.
sorry?
This is from our KP Law, and I showed this to the town attorney at the town meeting, and he did not dispute this whatsoever. So according to the summary is the district does have the authority to regulate a public water supply even where the land under the lake or pond is privately owned. I can go through the whole initial of it. Basically it says, I understand that the district owns a well in the lake, which is Hickory Hills, which I presume has been there a long time. The Hickory Hills landowners acquired the lake property in 1978. The district has the authority to acquire water supplies by eminent domain, purchase, lease, and hold the waters or any portion thereof, any pond, spring, stream, or any ground sources of supply by means of driven artesian or other wells within said town of Lunenburg, not already appropriated for the purposes of a public water supply. The Special Act of 1939, the act also provides that the district may also establish rules, regulations for the management of its waterworks, not inconsistent with this act or with the law. So, in summary, he was stating that we do not have to own the land under the lake to manage that water supply.
And I would disagree wholeheartedly, and I would want an opinion from our attorney.
Okay, you can, if you want, we can give you
So
this,
I
and
would
you
like
can,
you to,
yep.
yeah, if we
Cause
could
this
get
is
a copy
from,
of
this
that.
is from our attorney and the town attorney
Okay.
from Lunenburg.
And to acquire by eminent domain, you have to pay value, and that did not occur. So you have not gone through the eminent domain process. Now, to regulate by eminent domain, you would have to have acquired it, which would mean you would have to pay the value of any devaluing of people's property, because essentially, if you regulate that zone one in accordance with existing regulations, people are going to lose access to the lake.
Not true.
So,
No,
I'm
that's
sorry?
not true. Not true.
Well,
If you got rid of the boating and fishing thing on that that thing, everything was fine.
No.
I don't understand what the big deal was.
Because
You guys are
we-
looking way too far. DEP's approved that zone one, even though we didn't own the
Okay,
land.
you need to drop your tone a little bit, please.
No.
I think this tone
No,
is fine.
that ain't happening. But I mean, DEP's approved the zone one,
Mhm.
okay? But they didn't care if we owned the land under the lake. They didn't care. So the zone one is approved. So if the zone one is approved, that's it. It's
Yeah.
done.
Now, your opinion didn't come from your attorney, you just said you haven't got a hold of your attorney.
We are in contact with
So,
our attorney, and
well,
we
what
were,
do
we
they
were,
do
we
for
were,
it?
our
Why do we
hope,
wanna
our
give
hope
that?
was.
Why
Yeah, I
don't
was
you
gonna
take,
say,
let's
we
get
don't
their
have to-
opinion
It's
first.
it's public information. I am
get it.
now
And then you
requesting it
write a
under
letter and you can request it. Submit it to the clerk on workday.
the date, please. I am here in a public meeting on camera, I am going to submit it to the commission now.
Well, we might not receive it now.
Okay, I hope that this is being captured, that I am submitting a letter to the water district on a public meeting, and they are saying they will not receive it. I hope that that is clear to
I
all
said we-
residents of Hickory
I
Hills.
said we might
Well,
not.
why would you say that?
All right, Steve.
Now
Why
who's-
would you
now
come
who's
in
got a
here?
high voice
Why
now?
would you come in
Who
here
started
without,
yelling
why
first
would you
one?
come in here without your attorney's approval of what you're talking about in the first place?
No, she wanted her attorney to.
How many
review-
weeks
I
have you had
wanted-
to do
Why
this?
would
Let me make a
you
copy of that.
consult your
That way we don't have
attorney?
to waste
Why would you
That's what I'm
consult
saying.
your attorney and not?
Because we wanted to have the facts, which you do not.
Okay, John, we
Yeah.
came in here saying to you our concerns. Our goal is to have a meeting with DEP,
Yeah.
you, and us.
Yeah.
And our attorneys, if necessary. That is all we are seeking.
If necessary.
If necessary.
So that is all
Right.
we are seeking.
So we're back to, on our end, and on the town council end, so there's two public attorneys
Mhm.
that state that the town council didn't, I asked him if he had
You
any
said
problem.
you ran it by him there.
I
You
ran
did
it by him
research
there,
it,
I
or-
said, do you have any question of validity of this statement?
Okay.
He said, no, I believe that to be true,
Thank you.
and he had no concern over that statement.
Okay.
So, and I believe the same thing that Fran said, that,
Thank
you know, that there's no way, in my mind, DEP would have allowed us to put a well there without somewhere, some way, shape or form, us having the control over the zone one and the water that the well produces. If we needed the control of the land, then my guess is DEP would have told us that we would have needed to secure that, and we would have at that point by eminent domain, and we did not. Therefore, I feel that it's a legal well site. We have every right as a water district to the water from that well site. So, to me, that's answering the question. If you wanna run it by your attorney and see what, if they have a different view over who controls the well site and the water and under the land, under the lake, then that's great. But from our standpoint, I believe that we have a legal well site that we can utilize there. So then the next question is, do the residents of Hickory Hills want to engage in a cooperative study on what we can do to utilize the well site for the residents of the water district? At the same time, looking at your concerns and studying the effects of the well on the lake. And those
So
things.
we are not necessarily against that, to
Okay.
be clear. However, my concern is exactly in this paragraph that you just gave me. If you read this.
I've read,
Let me just, can I
Okay.
please just finish my statement? To regulate various aspects of the waters in Hickory Hills Lake. That's my concern. I have no question that you have the right to run the well, that you own the water in the well. I have no question about that.
Mhm.
My concern is the regulating of waters in Hickory Hills Lake without having taken it through eminent domain. That is my concern.
right,
And that's, I question, and maybe the regulations were different back then, I don't know, because this well, looking at the pumping tests, the plans that were drawn were 1994. I don't know if regulations were different, but under 310 CMR 22 now, and again, it could have changed, it says any public water supply must own or control the zone one.
right.
And that is the question, is my concern is this regulate waters of Hickory Hills Lake. Obviously, from a Hickory Hills Board of Directors position, that concerns us, because what does that mean?
Right.
And that's all we wanna understand.
And I think that is regulated through the zoning bylaws that the town holds. And that, again, when we had that whole conversation about what needed to be removed to make residents of Hickory Hills happy, it seemed to have completely spiraled out of control from that and went from that to something different from what we discussed. So
I'm confused, can you just clarify what
we
you're
Sorry,
sat
about
here
town
and at our town meeting,
Yeah.
and prior to town meeting, we sat here and had a really good discussion, and we agreed with, you know, the residents that were here, that, you know, somebody could read it that way. And you said that you were going to propose an amendment at town meeting,
Mhm,
and then the Facebook blew up down on Hickory Hills,
mhm.
and everybody got the wrong information. People came here and the last two meetings, this gentleman was here the last meeting, did you happen to, I hate to single you out, but did you watch any of our past meetings?
I'm the only one over here, away
Yes.
from the table, so I'm singled out anyhow.
Yeah,
As I mentioned to you after the last meeting, I did not watch any of your Facebook information,
yeah,
but I did do a lot of research on my own.
yeah,
Okay, meaning legal research, deed research. I've read the easement from the Hickory Hill, from the Woodlands predecessors entity that gives, you know, permission for certain aspects of the well operation. And what I found made me concerned, which is why I proposed the motion on town meeting floor. I did not
yeah.
confer with any of these people about that. I did it on my own as a concerned resident and a concerned water district member, by the way, about the suitability of that well and the legal basis for that well's existence. And it's, you
Yep.
know,
Look, I wasn't at the last meeting, and I don't think you were either, were you?
No,
yeah.
not the last meeting we
I
had.
don't know,
Last meeting you had,
but
yeah.
are you still concerned about the level of the water? The amount of water
Yeah.
taken?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, didn't it already go through all that?
We did, everything's up, we spent two meetings, I believe, talking about
Yeah,
concerns that they had, concerns that we had, and we felt that if we could study, if we put together a study, and we had a plan, and we said you could review our plan that we have, and if you had things that you wanted to look into that you felt that would affect the lake end of it, then we would work together to come up with
we even talked about,
a study for the
the
lake.
months that it wouldn't be inactive, or active, taking water certain months. We even talked about putting a gauge there
Right.
somewhere that could,
Yeah.
now we're back to the level of the lake again.
No,
No,
we're not.
no,
We're
we're
at,
not.
we're at a
No,
point
we're not.
now where
Okay,
you're still concerned about the zone one and the control and
Well,
that
so
aspect.
for instance, 2 years ago, we put a lot of chemicals in the lake to kill weeds.
Yep,
We have no idea if there would be any effect on water being pulled out of that lake.
well, we're gonna
To
be the
being-
ones to determine that.
I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
we did that, right? Because in our opinion, we own the water that's in that lake and we control it. And
Right.
we maintain it and we take care of it,
You
so.
don't control the water.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think you own
Well,
the water.
well,
You might the dam and the state controls all the water.
Okay,
That's
and we did it with a permit from the
Right, yeah,
River
we got a permit.
Conservation Commission
Permit.
and with
Permit.
DEP.
or whatever.
But you know,
Yeah.
I think Hickory Hills thinks that they own that water. They don't.
We have had attorneys tell us that we own the water
The
that is in
state
that lake.
owns the water,
No,
every
no,
drop.
they
So
own-
you're
they own a-
telling us.
so they own I think we're getting a little sidetracked.
Yeah, we are definitely
Yeah, all right.
inside.
Okay.
I'm
Let
just-
it
But
go, all right.
my point is, we did that without concern of the well.
Right,
We moved forward with concern of the lake, and that's what our board of directors are most concerned about. They're concerned about the lake and the residents around it, not about the well.
my
Right?
thought
And
is,
so we have residents that are in that cove, that are inside of that zone one, that have water rights and buffer rights, whatever. And if something comes back, like the last letter we got back from DEP that said, it would be nice if we restricted any motors from going through this
If we
area.
put up signs for
If we
motors.
put up
It would be
signs.
if,
Yeah, I'm just saying.
if you could.
So that's
Those are the
where
big things, there was a lot of
DEP
ifs.
is always going to lean, right? They're always gonna lean to the conservative side.
Right.
As it gets more and more conservative over time, there becomes more and more restrictions for our residents. And that's the concern we
Yep.
have, is when it gets to the point where all of a sudden, we can't, those people can't have boats in there. Or we can't be running boats near this area.
Or we can't treat the weeds.
Or we can't treat the weeds in that area,
And I think-
or, you know, on and on and on. That's the concern we have. So
So
we wanna
we-
make sure that DEP is fully on board, they fully understand what the zone one is, what it looks like, and what our residents do, because the state does not control our lake.
Are
We
you talking
control it.
about
It's
the
private.
woodlands being in zone one?
Yeah.
Are those the residents
There
you're
are-
talking
there are
There's
about?
more
areas-
residents
There
that
are
are
more,
with
there
us
are more than just the woodlands,
Right.
however.
that are inside of the zone one
And
area.
you're talking about the boats and stuff that the woodlands have in the water there as
No,
far
But
as?
there are those,
Anybody,
but there are,
anybody.
again, beyond the woodlands properties as well, there are other boats
there
and
are-
stuff.
I understand, now, I
So those are the
understand a little
concerns
more
that we
your
have.
concerns with that, and the treatment of the lake especially.
Right.
Whether that's something that's gonna, and that would be something that I would like to see us, when we study this thing, that's gotta come
So,
up.
so all of that stuff needs to be part of that.
Yeah.
And again, if we're upfront with DEP, they know exactly what we have, and they say, yep, we're in agreement. That is,
Yep.
the zone one is what it is, we'll put into writing that there won't be any restrictions for the lake, for the
Then
users
we're
of the
all on
lake,
board.
for the Hickory Hills Landowners Incorporated. If we
That-
have that,
I don't think that's a
then we're-
DEP thing.
we're
That's
concerned.
not,
Brought
that's
the
not part of the
environmental
wells
study.
But our issue, before
I
we
wanna
move
make
forward,
sure.
before
I
we
wanna
move
make sure,
forward with the
right?
study, our recommendation is to have a meeting with a member of DEP and us, the Hickory Hills and the Water District, to just talk about this, because we would like to understand, because all of us, myself, John, many members of the board, have researched the regulations for public water suppliers, which is 310 CMR 22. And in that, there are a lot of restrictions that are not currently followed within the zone one of Hickory Hills Lake.
and zone two,
So,
by the way,
and
you
zone
know,
two.
you know.
So we would like to understand that and make sure that DEP understands that. And then spend the money, because I think we talked about $100,000 or whatever for the study.
Right.
Before we spend that money, it's our opinion as both ratepayers and members of the board, it might make sense to have a roundtable discussion about the existing uses on the lake, the existing activities, and how they impact that well, and how they impact the ability to put that well online as a public water
Is
supply.
DEP gonna have a direct opinion on that, Fran, or is that gonna be something that we need to
I don't think they
make
will.
it? I don't think they will, I think that's gotta be part
They
of
already
the
approved the
study.
zone one, I mean, it's.
The zone one's the zone one.
DEP's done, you know,
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think DEP is going to have an opinion on that
Sounds like
at this
more of a
point,
civil
right?
matter or something in that, you know, I don't know what they're gonna come up with.
I've never dealt with DEP on, I mean, the zone one's been approved, you have to go through all that.
Everything
before
to
you
get to the zone
put a
one,
well line.
right.
Could we get copies of the approvals of the zone one? Would that be possible?
Yeah, I'm in that boat, have to demo.
That would be appreciated.
And then, I mean, we can reach out to DEP, but I don't think they're gonna, I think they're gonna go off of what a hydrogeologist or what the study would come back with, wouldn't it? I mean, they,
We're happy to write a letter to DEP with our concerns, and copy you guys, but if you have a contact at DEP and know who the appropriate person would be to send it to, that would be helpful.
The head guy's Robert Bostwick.
Robert, I'm sorry.
if we can try to get them, I
BOST.
think that's the best way.
BOSTWICK.
Thank you.
And then get, and yeah, if you copy us, if there's any responses, then at least we would have.
He's the
Okay.
one I asked the questions to
Okay.
initially, and then
Okay.
he passed that on to Catherine something.
Okay,
She's-
okay,
she's
well, if I
running
send
it.
it to her, he can funnel it wherever it needs to go, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, we will put together a letter, we will make sure we copy you so that you know what our questions are. You know, as John said, our responsibility is to look out for the residents, we're all members of the water district, and we are not against having this well go online if the effect to the lake is minimal. And we're willing to work with you on that. Our issue is to understand the potential impacts to our residents and to the uses on the lake.
Yeah,
That's
go-
our
Yeah,
responsibility.
going in blindly, for us just saying, well, here's what happened in the past, here's what, you know, we think we heard, here's what, that's just not gonna work, right? So we need to have it in writing, here is what the requirements are and will be, and if DEP says, you know what, you really should be restricting that, I didn't know you were gonna put chemicals in the lake, that doesn't make sense, right? I wanna be as upfront as
Right.
possible with them, just so they know exactly where we're at and what we plan on doing. Because what we don't wanna do is get 5 years down the road and then, go back to our residents and say, okay, we can't use this anymore, or whatever.
Right.
That's just, you know, that's.
That's
doesn't
not,
make
it's not
sense for
our intention
anybody.
either, and I
Right,
don't.
and I know that's not your intention,
Right.
and I'm sorry if it feels like we're being difficult, we're not trying to be difficult.
not.
We're trying to get all the facts, put them up front, put them on the table, and work with you on a study.
Mhm. So, at what point do you feel, if you write a letter to DEP, get a response from DEP, depending on that response, is that where we start to discuss the, scope of the study?
Yes,
I mean, I think
Yeah.
we've already hammered out a ton of scope.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I would
I think
say
so,
that
too.
we have a scope, you have a scope, we put them together and we hire somebody to, come up with a plan for a study.
Yep.
To me, that's the best way. So, I guess from here, it'd just be write a letter to DEP, you can get your responses from them, and then Fran, if you wanted to follow up with DEP
Sure. Yeah.
and see what their question, I understand some of your questions, they might not answer them, they might
And if-
wait.
And if
and
they
it
don't,
may-
then,
and it may-
and if they don't, then that's an answer.
Yeah, it may be something that they're waiting for information from the study to answer.
Mhm.
So,
Now, what input do you have from them to go forward with the study? What do you expect from that? What is their part in the whole study?
none,
Um,
none, right? Other
no,
than, they're gonna re-permit the well? Are we gonna go
well,
for-
no, we're all set with the permits, so what we would do is we would, present our intent for
The
for the
treatment?
study.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
okay.
typically, the study would go to DEP to say they approve of how we're gonna study
Yeah.
it. So, and then once it's approved, then off it goes.
And-
Yeah.
Cause you don't wanna do it and them
And
not
then
approve.
DEP
Yeah,
you
no,
say
yeah,
no.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
same thing we had to do with the dam. They had to
Yeah,
approve
they had to
everything
approve
first.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Same-
our,
same
our
issues.
push is, and I think you know, from the water district's perspective, it was about a $2 million resource to put in the ground.
Mhm.
It's about $1 million or $2 million to treat it,
Yes,
with lots of state funding
could, yeah.
available now to treat it. It's $4 million plus to replace that resource. So that's our push from our end, is trying to be responsible to the takers of the water district and supply them with the best and the most water that we can.
Completely understand that, but our responsibility, there are homes going on the lake right now for $1 million.
Yep.
It's a very sought after area, even small houses are going in excess of $600,000 or $700,000, it's amazing to me. So our responsibility is to those residents,
Yep.
because if their value, if their property is devalued because they now can't use it as they used to, and they now no longer have, and it's a small portion, but that would no longer have access to that lake, or if we find out we can't treat our lake, or we find, then our values are gonna go down. So that's our responsibility to our homeowners.
Yep, nope, I understand that. I mean, we're both working to protect the interests that we,
Represent.
there you go,
There you go.
perfect.
Yep, yep.
So, I would hope that DEP could be somewhat responsive, because, you know, we need to do this, we need to get on the study to be able to
And if they're
take
not,
advantage of those funds.
and if they're not responsive, what are you gonna do then?
Well, we'll have to see, I would think that are they normally pretty good at getting back to you, Fran?
Well, no, I mean about if they have no, input.
They might not have an
on the
opinion, they
problem,
might,
that's what I'm
say-
saying.
I would say that they're either gonna have input or no input, or wanna wait until the study's done.
Okay, so let's say
Those are
that
the
is the
three
case,
options
that
in my
DEP
mind.
doesn't really open up and say much to this.
Right.
Is it then that your attorney comes up with their opinion and then we kinda hash that out that way?
Yep.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I hope
That
we don't
costs
get
us all
there,
money.
it'll cost us all money, and I
Right.
hope we don't get there. That's why I would, ideally, I'd like to just sit down and hash this out.
Yeah.
Because all we wanna understand is what the current uses on the lake, according to 310 CMR, may not be able to continue.
What's 310 CMR?
310 CMR 22, it's a public water supply regulation under
Right.
under
And-
DEP.
And DEP has already told us not to utilize that when we're doing,
Yeah.
so I have no idea why there would be a regulation and then the regulating authority would say, don't use that regulation.
But that's concerning
That's
to us as
concerning.
well.
Yeah.
And that says, okay, yeah, we have all these regulations and they're in place and you're gonna do this. But
But
in this
you don't have
case,
to
you
follow.
really don't need to.
And I would
And
refer
that,
to,
I don't know if
refer
that's
to,
one person's opinion, or if that's, you know, the
I
way
ref-
DEP works.
I would ask that specific question, cause it seems to be, the point that is brought up the most is the 310 CMR. That would be one of my direct
But
questions.
it's because
to
it's the most
DEP.
restrictive.
But
It's the
my
most
question,
restrictive of all.
we don't have anything, and that's why I asked for a copy of the approval, because if DEP has exempted this well from those requirements, that would be important to know and to
Yeah.
include in
Right.
correspondence.
And we wanna make sure the exemption
Continues in
exists for all,
perpetuity.
yeah, in perpetuity.
Yep.
Because if it doesn't, if 10 years from now, John and I are no longer on the board, you know, and now those restrictions are gonna be implemented,
Yep.
that's gonna be hugely
You're gonna be there
problematic.
for another 10 years?
No, I said we're
We
not
plan
gonna
to
be
live-
there.
we plan to live that long.
God, no!
We plan to live that long.
Look, and if we get through this problem we got here now, is anything else gonna arise?
No, I think
I think that we could, we, as John said, we truly are not trying to be difficult. We are trying to represent the interests of our residents. And we weren't even aware of these restrictions on the zone one, or even where the zone one was, until after the initial meeting when we talked about the study.
Right.
And both of us had anticipated coming to the second meeting saying, yeah, we're all on board with the study. And then we got a copy of the proposed regulations, and then
And the
everything kind
changes,
of blew up.
and the changes,
Because
yeah,
I didn't
exactly.
know anything until that Monday about that.
Yep, and honestly, we weren't even thinking Hickory Hills, cause it was about, the changes were because of what we were doing on Lancaster Ave.
Right,
Right.
right.
So, okay,
And the zone one has never changed, that's been exact from the day that well was
Yeah.
put in.
Right, well, I looked at the plan from 1994, and you're right, the zone two has changed drastically, because it used to just be those fingers, there's 3 fingers that come out, and the zone two used to just be there. There's in the pumping report, there's a black area that shows the zone
Okay.
two. But the zone one, you're right, shows that
The zone
400
one
foot
doesn't
The
radius.
change.
zone two is actually very small, the
Is
zone
it still-
three
is it-
carries up the hill.
Carries up there.
Okay,
yeah.
so is the
Yeah.
zone two still just that point? Where the well
It
is?
comes up a little bit, it's pretty much the easement area that we,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Okay,
pretty much. the
okay, so
zone.
that may not have changed, but you're right, I looked at the pumping report, and you're right, that 400 foot radius
And
hasn't
it was always on the
changed.
town website until, I don't know when they
Yeah.
did the GIS software
Yeah.
or whatever, somehow
Yeah.
it got put into the old map from like the seventies.
Yeah, but the issue with the regulations, as you know, was the new restrictions. And I did talk to Adam Burney about that, and he says they came from, that he had no part in it, that it came from the hydrogeologist.
yeah,
That's true.
and that's the thing, we had no part in it, it came from the hydrogeologist.
So part of the, where they say, don't look at that CMR 310 thing, it was more tied to the wording of it. It said that you cannot do this in the zone one or the zone two. She didn't like that, because that means that if you didn't do that and you did this, you're okay, even though that's not okay. You know, so that's why it was more of the wording that was in that with.
The
she-
wording of the bylaw?
Yeah, the wording that was in the CMR 22.
Okay,
The wording said you can't do this,
yeah,
and that's what she didn't like that, because there's a lot of other things you can't do. So it was the wording where it specifically said one, you can't have a sewer treatment plant in zone one, and it didn't say specifics of other things that were sewer tied to that you still can't do, you know? So it was the wording that was, she didn't want, that's why she put in our, when we do that, don't do specific things that you can't do.
oh, in the reply.
Yes.
The reply,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yes.
guys shared that, and,
Right,
and
it's
she
not
said, don't, because anything that you don't put in the regulation is considered allowed. So that's
Right.
why,
You're right,
that's
yes,
why she
right.
was saying, just refer to, I think it was something about refer to the regulations of, the zone one is limited to water supply operation activities, is what she said. Catherine Hamilton's France.
Yes, yes, for
Um,
yeah.
so that is, we don't know what that means.
Mm.
What does
I
that
get what you're
mean?
saying, yeah.
You know, on the lake portion of it, what does that mean to us?
Well, but it also, she says in here also to not use the
Do not
WHP
use-
regs in 310 CMR 2221 to
Right.
prohibit activities.
To
Be- well,
prohibit
be-
activity.
Because they provide many exceptions, so she's
Okay.
basically saying she doesn't wanna have exceptions,
Mm,
So-
the regs provide,
many exceptions.
Right.
right,
So that's why she's saying not to do it, and she's saying just say water supply, it's limited to water supply operation activities. What does that mean to Hickory Hills?
Right.
That's our question. Because this is very restrictive. And when she says, you know, maybe put up signs, no motors allowed, well, obviously that raised a red flag for everybody that lives on the lake.
if you can limit boating,
Right,
and if
Right.
you can,
right.
you know, those are just suggestions.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
not you
Exactly.
must, if it
Right.
says you must, then
But
that definitely is a huge.
I understand that if down the road, somebody could look at it and
Because the
say,
next- the
It's
next
saying, we're
person
taking off the
says-
if.
Yeah, we're taking off the if, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Have to go green, I guess, huh? Electric motors.
well, they're gonna all be electric pretty quick anyway.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
on the way.
true, that's true.
You're not gonna have canopies on the boat, you're gonna have solar
Got
panels.
electric airplanes too.
Yep.
Gonna be flying all around.
Great,
So we will draft something to DEP, and
Okay.
we'll make sure we copy you.
okay,
Yeah, you have my email in the moonwalk.
Yeah,
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 Yep.
yeah, yeah.
and then, you know, once you hear back from them, if you have concerns about moving forward, let us know.
Once we get the reply, then I think we can schedule another meeting to
Sure.
talk about where we go from there. And, you know, I'll certainly put in the letter, you know, and the prompt response would be appreciated, is there's grant funding available for the water district, and I know you guys are looking at the PFAS, and I know all the grants that are available, and I get where you're coming from, I truly do.
Mhm.
But, you know, we need to understand the potential ramifications to
And,
us.
and any future ones as well.
Exactly.
Current and future, yep.
Right.
We have our next meeting June 8th.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sure we won't have a reply.
No.
June
by
8th
then.
and the 22nd.
I would
It's usually the second
really
and the
like
fourth
to try
Monday,
to
the second,
see if
fourth
we
Wednesdays
could,
each month.
we will be pushing, as soon as you have a letter to DEP,
Yeah,
we're gonna contact them probably as well, to try to push along any questions that they have about the questions, so that,
okay,
cause it would be really good for us to try to, I don't wanna wait to an annual meeting to try to approve this study.
right.
I'd like to
Right,
try to
no.
move on the study as fast
So
as we
you
can.
would schedule a special meeting to do
We
that?
do a special meeting once we, agree on the scope of the study,
Mhm.
and then that way we could get started on it, because I'd like to do something that, it wouldn't hurt to go through the winter. I mean, we talked about a 1 year,
Right.
a minimum of a 1 year study.
Minimum of a 1
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
right.
So,
Right.
you know, but after a certain point, they're not gonna wanna get set up to do this.
Mhm.
I'd prefer to get set up, you know, if we could, possibly get set up before the winter, that way
Before the
we
winter,
have
yeah.
like all next year to study,
Yeah.
Completely understand and.
so. Because again, at a point, the funds aren't gonna,
Right.
and whether the study actually comes back and and comes up with a feasible treatment for us, who knows? How much,
Yeah.
you know, what they're
Right.
gonna come back with,
Right.
so.
So we will put something together as soon as we can. We can't send anything out without having our board review it.
Okay,
Because,
Yeah.
so we will do
Alright.
that via an email vote,
okay,
so that we can do it as expeditiously as we can.
okay, does it seem like that June 22nd might be a?
It's all gonna be dependent on DEP.
Okay.
So we'll get something out this week probably, or,
Well,
well,
not
this is
next
Memorial Day
week,
weekend, yeah, next week.
We will get something out next week.
You got it, okay.
Yeah.
So John has a prior thing, so we're gonna move the rest of our meeting right along, cause we can't have a one person
Do your-
meeting.
Do you need to at least get the next
You
thing
need a-
approved real quick?
You need a board
Yeah.
vote to approve that.
Okay.
To the law.
Okay, are we good then?
I think we are good.
Yeah,
We will
okay,
get a
great.
letter out by next week and we will send you guys a copy. And then if you wanna follow up, we would appreciate it if you do follow up DEP, if you would just copy us.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, we would, or at least reach out and make sure they got the letter and then see
Yeah.
what
yeah,
they.
and see if there's any questions from your standpoint as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Alright, very good.
You wanna read down, I'll make a
Sure,
copy.
sure.
Here, Fran, you can talk, I'll make copies so you can go over that.
Alright, yeah, that one, yeah. Alright, so,
Is this your signature?
you can vote to have me sign it or you guys sign it.
Okay, what's,
But anyway, so this is the well behind well number 2.
yep,
And we did a full pump test on it. It came back, the water quality went high in iron and manganese.
right.
So we want to install 2 more wells further away from the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to do another 5-day pump test because we're adding 2 additional wells.
Mhm.
So this is just to do the pump
That's all
test
dependent on the volume.
and submit to DEP.
Okay,
It must be available
all
online.
right, accept the motion to
Yeah,
allow
it is.
Fran to enter into the proposal for well number 9, phase 2 pump test on Lancaster Ave. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that part is done.
Okay, that was the only important one, so.
Okay. All right,
Folks, I hate going down that line.
all right,
Well, yeah, so John and I were just looking at it, this is really
Okay.
helpful, because it does say that you don't have to own or control the land within the 400 radius, this is really helpful.
Okay.
But it does say that all land within said 400-foot radius will be subject to the Lunenburg Water District Aquifer Protection Bylaw,
Right.
which is the key, and so have that bylaw
Lunenburg Water
pass.
District. Well,
It
that's.
would- we would
should it
not
say
have been
Lunenburg
grandfathered.
Water District or Lunenburg Town of Lunenburg?
It says Lunenburg Water District.
Lunenburg Water
So you have an
District.
aquifer protection bylaw?
Do we?
Well, that's the one we passed with the town. We have the
Okay.
town.
Okay.
It is the town, it is the
Okay.
the code of whatever, the code of
So all,
Lunenburg.
so the boating and fishing and the other
I'll make a
aspect of it
Thank you.
would have, if we if we added boating and fishing back into it and took out some of the restrictive DEP approval stuff, then the rest of that bylaw, I believe we had no issue with.
You're correct.
Because I will tell you, Fran will tell me I'm crazy, but I'd like to update our map, and I'd like to update the bylaw. But I'm not gonna go through another meeting like I did without everybody has already scrutinized this thing pretty good. If
No,
we
I
can,
totally understand.
if we iron it out, then I would ask Adam to bring it to a special
Right.
fall
Right.
meeting,
Well,
but
right, the
if we
planning board
can't.
wasn't, aware of that regulation until that Monday night.
Right.
You guys weren't aware of the regulation, so that
Right.
can't happen again. We gotta all sit down and talk about it before it goes before town meeting, to avoid what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know, we'd have to consult with the hydrogeologist on that change. So if there were changes that, that residents brought forward, I think we should consult with the hydrogeologist that did the report and make sure that, you know, he was acting on behalf of what he felt DEP would wanna see.
Mhm.
If he's okay with it, then we may push it along. But if it's not a greased pig and gonna go right through fall town meeting, I'm not gonna
Don't do
propose
it
it and
again.
leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so when you outdoor, I would have had concerns with some of these other things. You know, with prior DE approval,
I would-
outdoor recreation and nature study, eliminating raised wooden walkways, cause a lot of the Woodlands residents have wooden walkways to get to their beaches.
In the
That
zo-
was
in
gonna
the
be
zone one?
eliminated, yeah,
Yeah.
that was gonna be eliminated.
I would, again, if any concerns that the
Yeah.
Lake Association has, I was saying if they had concerns about the way the proposed zoning bylaw change was, highlight those, send them back to the hydrogeologist. If he feels that they need to stay in there, then we'll
Right,
just,
but the
file
ones
that.
that, the zone 1, that's
Mhm.
the woodlands land.
But it's
Right.
also the lake, right, it's the woodlands land, but it's also the lake because of boating and fishing, cause that was
Oh, I agree in the
restricted.
boating and fishing, but
Yeah.
the walkways and stuff, it's just water. No one's gonna build a walkway in the water.
no, but on the
Right, but on the
lands-
woodlands land, so a lot of people have little walkways to get to their,
But that's in the,
areas.
that's zone
That's
2,
not-
that's not the zone 1, right?
Yeah, zone
It is-
2,
it
that's
is part of
okay.
zone one.
It is part of zone
So
one.
I
There is
just,
not.
I drew some houses in here, but there are a couple of houses right down along here that would be affected by that zone.
They should not be in that zone 1.
Well, they may have
They're
walkways or
terrible.
whatever.
And they certainly have
There are
gardens.
there are
Okay,
definitely,
I'll give
there
you
are
that.
definitely
You might have
fishing
walkways.
in
They
there.
could have walkways.
Walkways,
Yeah,
docks,
because-
docks
and
and
they
stuff
have
like that.
docks.
And they have gardens, and
They have
gardening would
docks
be
and
prohibited.
gardens.
Right. So, again, I think that the concerns that the residents have about the zone one, I think that we shoot it back to the
Yeah,
hydrogeologist.
so I'm
And
not
if he,
opposed to
and if
anything.
he is okay with modifying those, fine. If he's not okay, then we're not, I'm not gonna go
He's
after
gonna
it.
do, he's gonna look at what DEP wants him to say, and he's gonna do what we want him to put in there. So he's gonna put what we want. DEP was gonna say, hey, we don't like that, we wanted this, and we're like, hey, this is all we had. And that's-
So we can make the changes then, you're saying, and send it back to DEP and see if they're okay?
No, we can make the changes, send it to the town and get it approved. And
Okay.
All we're required to do is
Is
request.
to try.
Is
You're-
request
Is
it.
to try, yeah.
So we got our permit, so all I did is write official letter to Adam.
Yep.
I'm requesting that he modify the town
But
bylaws. And
if
that's what I
we,
did.
if
Put
we
it up there.
modify those against our regulating body DEP's opinions,
Yeah.
then, I mean,
So-
should we be modifying that? That's why,
Okay, so let's say there's some things in there that they don't like. So when we go for our next permit, they're gonna look at that, and they're gonna say, hey, you need to request to change that again. And that's what happens, so this will be a future fight down the road. But
Okay.
the thing is with that, the Hickory Hill, the Woodlands thing, doesn't really matter what the bylaw says. Cause we fully control that thing. So if the bylaw says you can have walkways and gardens, and we walk down and say, you're not putting a garden in there, doesn't matter what that zoning bylaw says. We're the board's in charge of what happens there. So that, just because a bylaw's there, doesn't mean they
we
can
can't allow it. We
Yeah, you
allow,
could
we allow
squash it,
things,
I mean.
we allow things that shouldn't, that bylaws restrict currently in zone ones.
I understand, I understand what you're saying. Obviously, my concern would be that if we had a really tough zoning officer come in and
Mhm.
said, take it all out, I mean.
Oh, yeah, we don't want, yes.
Right, no, I agree,
Yeah.
we agree.
I'm on your side.
Yeah.
So, I would say, literally, highlight that thing, make some notes on it, and if we think we can make those changes with no problems, then we'll make those changes, because I'd really like to see the map updated. I don't know if we tried to, did we already spend the money to change the old map so that they could put it in the GIS system that the
Yeah,
town
it's
has?
all sent back to town, the old map to be put back in.
Okay, well, then,
The new map's already made.
it's already made, so if we can,
it's fine.
if we can get updated and it's easy, then I'm willing to.
It's all pretty easy, it's all computerized, it's all on the computer, once you get your program and set up, I don't know what they call it.
Okay, so,
They have wording, special wording they called it, yeah.
as long as you highlight all of the things, we can at least discuss them, as long as there's not an issue, we'll make the changes, and as long as nobody has an issue, then I may consider bringing it to the board, to bring the town meeting and see what happens, see if that.
At the November town meeting.
Yeah, what we need to do is petition the, who organizes the articles in the order? Adam always says that he puts in for Article 1 when he puts in his stuff, but they put him all the way at the
The
end.
selectmen, it's the selectmen,
Oh, okay.
the town manager and the selectmen,
All right, well, maybe we can,
work on Heather a little bit.
maybe, we'll see. But I think if we come up with something that didn't have so much last minute information, then hopefully we could just push that through. Be done. Our meeting was actually adjourned probably 10 minutes ago, but that's okay, the discussion's still great, so.
No, we appreciate you
Yep.
listening to us and, you know, we're,